Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my channel. And this is Rajiv. I'm the F&B manager. Today we will discuss a very interesting topic, and this is whiskey. Whiskey is quite famous all around the world, and let's have one sip first. Yeah, this is one of my favorite, and let's go. Sir, how are you? Cheers. Okay, this is a whiskey which you can go through anywhere all around the world, and we will discuss about whiskey. Yeah, tastes really nice. Yeah, it's one of my favorite as the Scotch Blue Label, and one of my favorite as well is the JD. Yeah, so we will discuss about few of the things which we will talk about. Let me have a sip. Cheers, man. All right. So let's talk about the whiskey as such. As whiskey is a very distinct thing. We will discuss about different kind of whiskey, how the whiskies has been spelled, and because there's a common mistake happens as such. Now this training is for the F&B people only, and we will as for me and for my hotel, we can able to do a lot of trainings as such for you and for your staff. So please stay tuned till the end. You will get a good knowledge about it today, but this is just introductory. I will not go through a lot of points in detail as such because of the time frame. I need to finish it within half an hour, so I will not take much of your time. So just stay tuned and stick to the screen, and let's discuss about whiskey in a very enjoyable manner. And there are some tips which I will be giving you on different types of whiskey, how to drink that and how to enjoy it. That's the basic purpose. For coming from there, how many percentage of corn and those things you can find out in other YouTube channels, and it's been very described with the video. So I don't want to make you feel bored as such. So let's carry on with that, as this is the very important and a topic which I would like you to enjoy. Sorry, I am a little bit of wet right now to get it as a sweating of the summer is really hot here. All right, so let's continue, and let's discuss about the whiskey, which you can see in my screen in the front. Whiskey has been spelled in twice, so which is essential distilled beer, or a grain that has been mashed and fermented, and is one of the oldest recorded spirit. Although credible evidence exists that the Irish monks brought the skill of distilling to Scotland, it is the Scotch whisky whose earlier history dominated and defined the category. Although all whiskies are different from their stylification, from their stylistically, they all are different. They share one common thing, although they are cask aged and as such, and they are also quintessential essentially done, so which essential brown goods. So whiskies also further illustrate the tie between spirits and the origins, so as each style has developed based on the grain and other resources: oak of barrel, a local water, a local fuel such as peat for firing the stills, etc. They were plentiful close to home where they originally made. There are a couple of in India. There are a couple of IMFL whiskies which are came from Scotland, because they find the similar category which they can produce within the country as such. But there are certain whiskies as such, we will discuss more further, which cannot be changed. The recipe and the taste which comes from, as I mentioned before, the local water, the fuel, the peat is very important, playing a very important role while making a whiskey. So the taste differ. So let's carry on. First we'll discuss about very good thing, that is how to spell it. Yeah, So the spelling which gives a totally different, which is a quite been a common mistake, people don't know about it. So if you can see it, the spelling is whiskey and whiskey, which is SKY and SKEY. Yeah, so these two spellings are differentiate in many different whiskeys. You can see in the label, it will be mentioned there as such. So the Canadian and the Scotch whiskey are basically SKY, and the Irish, Tennessee and Bourbon goes in SKEY. Yeah, it might be contradictory in some of the states, some of the country, as per your knowledge as well, but this is quite been different because this is the general term which has been been researched. I got it researched and then I put it across out here. So this is a kind of thing which you should all remember, and then let's go through one by one to the different types of whiskies which we have. So first we have a bourbon whiskey. Bourbon whiskey is an American whiskey, and I will just go through very fast. As you can see, the bourbon whiskey has to have 51 to 79% of corn, and if it is more than 79%, then the corn will be, it's called as corn whiskey. It will not be called as bourbon whiskey as such. So this is the very important thing for the bourbon whiskey, and everyone knows that how it has been made, and there is a pot distill and still distill is going on, and the bourbon whiskey has been produced in 1789. So it has been quite been long term of the by Kentucky region. So it's, I'll not go through much of that. Yeah, so a few of the bourbon whiskeys are pot stills, and the basic classification is of course our brand names, signature brands, signature blends include the bulk of bourbon production categories realized with the skills of distillery master blenders to use of bourbon stock which are maintained in the consistency of the house style as such of the bourbon. So the, like for example, Jim Beam is a main bourbon which has been quite famous all around. So this is the basic thing which you should remember. A small batch, these are small quantities of distinctive bourbons, often with extended aging, more thousands of barrels in an aging warehouse developed differently according to the location of the warehouse. So it's all happens in America. So the bourbon is a very very distinct thing, and in India you will find a lot of bourbons comes around, but Jim Beam is the quite famous which you will find all around India. But of course, in a good five-star hotels, you can able to see a very different kind of bourbon whiskies as well. Then we have one more type of bourbon whiskey, which is single barrel. On occasion, the character and the quality of the single barrel is so high as to warrant the bottling and the labeling separately. So that's a single barrel, which is quite been, sorry, cheers man. I will rather, I will give you tips later on. I'm just drinking it net, but there is something which a mixologist tips I will be giving you, so I don't want to do it over here. It's over here, but in after some times. Okay, so as we mentioned about single barrel. So the it's a very expensive and a very tasteful, very much aromatic of the things comes out once you add something in that. So that one we will discuss in that. So the aging of the bourbons, by law it has to be aged in a charred American oak barrel for a minimum of 2 years, and most bourbon is aged for at least 4 years, I would say, and many other luxury bourbons are aged for much more longer. So any bourbon aged for less than 4 years must be designated as such on the label. Yeah, so that's very very important for the aging purpose. Oh, the purpose of bourbon whiskey is very rich, very smooth whiskey flavored with excellent neat, no ice, no mixtures on the rocks. It's a very very nice as such. But you can have it with, but no ice, no mixture. I prefer it by that way, mixed with the cola, a classic cocktails such as Manhattan or old fashioned mint julep can be worked out very nice with bourbon as such. So depends on the guest. Whenever you're making a cocktail with the whiskey, ask the guest which whiskey they like to put it, so we can go ahead with that thing. The bourbon makes a very fantastic sour. So anything with a little bit of sourness is there. Mint julep, it's a very nice thing to have it with the bourbon as such. Yeah, let's move on. Let's go to Tennessee. All right, as Tennessee is, yeah, the Jack Daniel JD, one of my favorite as well. It goes very nice. So let's move on. What is Tennessee is all about? Although it's like a bourbon in ingredients, but most production process the Tennessee whiskey as its own category with a distillery mellowing flavor owing to a special filtration process, which has been very much I will be mentioning a little bit of that. Okay, like bourbon whiskey, Tennessee whiskey contains a 51 to 70% of corn with the balance of neutral grain spirits. Tennessee whiskey productions same as bourbon, although the distillation, but then the whiskey is charcoal filtered as follows. So, which is the very distinct thing for Tennessee as such. So the whiskey is placed in a leaching vats and allowing to seep slowly through many layers of Tennessee hardwood maple charcoal. Yeah, so this thing is you have to remember, because this is the kind of whiskey which you will not find a similar taste with the other whiskey, and it's quite been different, and there is some characteristics which I will tell you in the end of the session for this whiskey in particular. This slow down the leaching process and mellow and softened and purifies the whiskey. So there is no official classification for this, but Tennessee whiskey is aged in American oak barrels. The smooth, mellow whiskey that's excellent mixed with cola. Yeah, so JD with Coke, JD with Pepsi I didn't see, but JD with Coke, any kind of cola will work out very nice. And in the Lichberg lemonade can be also made with that. So a super premium version has have a distinct smoothness that makes a great of snipping. I also taste JD honey, quite been smooth, a little bit of honey flavor, and it's a very nice to have honey at the end of the meal, because it's really smooth eyes, and those who don't like to go for desserts, they can go for the honey flavor as such. All right. Tennessee, this can be made a very nice Manhattan, a little bit of sweet vermouth with a little bit of bitter. It can gives a very nice stirred drink along with Tennessee JD, which can be made a very particular Manhattan. So you should try it. It's one of my mixologist tips as well. So that's the thing. Plus JD, it cannot be made out of the place in Tennessee where it's particularly making because of the spring water. The water which has been used there is the main source of making a JD because of the distinct character of that water, which actually flavor very flavorful, which makes this whiskey very flavorful. So that's why it has cannot be made. Even IMFL of some people have tried for making JD, but it turns out something else. So they skip up that process, and you need to import it from there itself. So it will remain imported whiskey for India for a very long time. I hope so. Yeah. All right. Now let's go to Canadian whiskey. The Canadian whiskey distilled industries are started in 1800 with two pioneers, yeah, Hiram Walker and Joseph Segram. So please remember these two names. Those are the brand continues to flourish. Canadian whiskies are blended in a very highly flavorful whiskey and neutral grain whiskies crafted to yield a light body approachable style. All right, the Canadian whiskies are based on combination of the grains corn, rye, wheat, barley malt, and corn or rye is a dominant component in the most Canadian blends as such. Canadian whiskies are produced in a continuous stills, so it will be a different thing as such. No classifications as such. The aging of Canadian whiskies are aged in oak barrels, new or used, recharged recharred for a minimum of 3 years. Yeah. Purpose an ideal mellow mixing whiskey of highballs and sours. It's a very nice whiskey to make it as such. All right, now the tips for the Canadian whiskey. It's harmonize well with very other flavor, making them a great complex cocktails like old fashioned. Yeah, so you should try whiskey in an old fashioned. If you're going for a Canadian, it gives you a very nice distinctive flavor. If you have a available, so luxurious Manhattans and a great for sipping. So it's a very nice to have a Canadian whiskey as such. And just ask them to make old fashioned, so the bartender knows how to make it twist as such. With the Canadian whiskey, it will taste really amazing. Yeah, let's go to Irish. I love Irish coffee. So let's go to the Irish whiskey. Irish whiskey may have been originally malt whiskeys, but some historically accounts suggest that the distillation from fermentation mashes for malted barley in Ireland predate their emergence in Scotland. Yeah, so the Scottish and Irish are very near to each other, but the Irish is a little bit different from there. Irish whiskey has been followed a reverse path to that of Scotch. Yeah, while the Scots very successfully turned their attention to a name brand blends as they spirit businesses globally over the last century. The Irish, until 1953, stuck to unblended malts. Those small productions and higher price could not compete. So in the last few decades, the trend has reversed, when the Irish focusing most on compete the last few decades, almost excluding all blends, and the Scots put increasing efforts into single malt. Yeah, so the Irish whiskies are distilled from malted and unmalted barley as well as from the other grains. Irish whiskies are triple distilled in pot still. Yeah, so you should remember this one as such. Yeah. There is no official classification. Some Irish whiskies have been carried an age designation on the label, so that can be read in the back of the Irish whiskey as such. Irish whiskey must be cask aged for a minimum of 3 years. The classic whiskey is a great of sipping, and of course for Irish coffee, which is I came out as such. I hope you have all enjoyed the Irish coffee. Then we go to elaborate Scotch. Scotch is everywhere. Yeah, Scotch as well as Scotch, and of course I found the 12 years one, so it has 18 and it has above then as well. And I have also able to taste a Royal Salute, which is a quite good, and one of the whiskey training which I went. So cheers, man. All right, there is some things which you should I will tell you. The whiskey is properly taste and aromatic in its nit flavor, and then if you want to have the aromas to come out, use a mineral water, not much, but a dash of it. That's it. Yeah, so the more expense, the more quality of, I'm not going for the expensive ones, but the quality of a whiskey, it's everything comes out once you add a little bit of mineral water rather than going for on the rocks. You can go for on the rocks, you can mix a soda, water, Coke, as I mentioned before. But if you really want to taste it, yeah, you want to taste the first sip, you should add, like I have tried the double black, which is also been very strong, very aromatic, very smooth in the tongue, but the flavor comes out when you put a dash of mineral water, not only RO water, but the mineral water, which actually gives you very nice aromas comes out. It's just blast as such. Yeah, so which will not come with the ice, because ice cools down the aromas because of the ice constant, because it's different for different spirits. But whiskey is a kind of thing which, cheers, man, that's nice. All right, let's go to the Scotch. Scotch whiskey dated from at least the 15th century. Yeah, originating with the monks who developed and refined the skills of distilling and whiskey production, as they have been brewing and winemaking to the other parts of Europe. As the skill passed though the families and generation, the distinction of the local water and peat, oak barrel aging and carefully blended, they've been doing it in a very different style. They study it so well, they make themselves master of it, that they can even produce a Scotch even in India. Yeah, so that's a kind of thing you can able to think about Scotland. Whenever you think about Scotland, the Scottish whiskies are quite good in many ways. Yeah, so there are basically two types of Scotch you will find. One is a blended Scotch, one is, and the other is single malt. Yeah, so blended Scotch is produced by blending grains, whiskies, single malt whiskies to produce a house style. So they have their own house style. For example, Johnny Walker, J&B, Davis, and Shiva's Regal, which I just now showed to you as they all are blended whiskey. They have their own recipe, they have their own calculation, and it's until now it's a secret for where the taste has came from. So but they keep it as it is. Yeah, they don't change, they don't want to change, and they keep on adding something good as such. Then goes our single malt whiskey. Single malt is it's a whiskey of the 100% malted barley produced with a single distillery. Yeah, this only this small thing you need to remember for the single malt as such, bottled unblended to showcase the distillery as a distinctive character. That's all. But as it's coming from the single distillery, as it's come from 100% malted barley, so there are some rules which they have to follow so that they can get the 100% as a single malt. Otherwise it will be not been approved by the government over there. So that's a very important thing which you should remember as such. By law, as we go there, Scotch must be produced from cereal grains grown in Scotland only. A barley, both malted and unmalted, is the dominant grain. A local water in the major Scotch whisky zones is also considered of a great importance of the ultimate quality of the whiskey. Yeah, so the production of the distinctive smoky character of Scotch, especially for the single malt, typically comes from the peating of the malt. Yeah, after the barley is germinated and malted, grain is dried over fire for soothing peat. The distinctive Scottish soil decomposes highland grasses. The smoke from the fire permeates the barley, leaving their distinctive character and flavor that Scotch as known for. The chemistry of the peat and the amount used in drying varies among distillery, some of which use no peat at all, and thus contributes to the each malt's unique character. After fermentation of the grain, Scotch whisky is double distilled. Pot stills are used for malt whisky, and column stills may be used for the grain whiskies employed with malts in blended Scotch whisky. As those people who don't know what is the, I'm sure that those who are attending this training today, you know about pot still and column still as such. We will discuss more in detail about that in our next session. But these are the some characteristics which by law in Scotland they need to follow. Each one has a same formula but with the twist, so that gives the difference in many tasting variations of the whiskey as such. Although there is no official classification system, in practice, single malt whiskey are classified according to their region of origin. Lowland, Highlands, including the Speyside sub-district, yeah, Camberley Town, and the islands, which includes Islay and the Isles of Skye. So, among the Scotch whiskey connoisseurs, they have much there is a much dispute on exactly how many whiskey producing regions are there in Scotland, but some sources say 3 and others say maybe 8. So on the following page we list down some of the regions, and just we will just go through it in a very quick manner, so you will have a little idea of how it is distinct as such. But Scotland is place where you will find nearly about whole country is full of whiskey production, and most of the whiskey production is near to a natural spring or a river, which actually been used, that river water actually been used to produce the whiskey, which actually gives the flavor of that particular whiskey. If the same whiskey with the same formula has been made in a different part of the world, it will seriously give you a different taste, because that does not give the same taste exact as such. All right, let's go to the different types, different regions. We have lowlands. This region is the southernmost area of Scotland. Whiskey from the region are said to be lighter in body and color. Often they tend to be softer and mellower than the Highland counterparts. Lowland whiskey tends to emphasize the malt over the peat flavor. Okay, so this malt and peat flavor, you will find it when you are really tasting the whiskey is done. Right now I do not have much video to show to you as well, but this is the, you have a lot of YouTube has given a lot of videos in which you, if you want to study, you can go through it in a very deep, so that you will come to know. I'm just going through the whole area as just a flash. Then we have a Highlands. This is a geographically the largest part of the whiskey producing region. The Highlands produces the widest range of flavor and style. The Highland malts are generally thought to be the bigger and more browny than the lowlands. Yeah, so the brown textures comes from the Highlands as such. Speyside. Speyside sub-district, a region which runs the length of the river Spey on the eastern side of the Highlands, and this is the greatest concentration of Scotch whisky distilleries. The whisky of these regions are noted to be elegant and complexity. Yeah, so that's a very good thing for a Highland. So if you got a chance to go there, please visit the Scotland's Highlands if you don't have a time as such. Yeah, then let's go to Campbelltown. This is the smallest region, as is known as salty sweetness. Yeah, why it's called salty sweetness? As once this area has had more than 30 distillery, but now there is only few, which is Springbank and Glen Scotia. So this is the best known as of now. So some say that the whiskey style is halfway between the whiskey of the Highlands and Isles. Let's go to the third part, fourth part, which is the islands, and these includes Isle and Isle of Skye, Jura, Hura, and Orkney district. Isles, a small island off the west coast of the Scotland, and yields one of the most distinctive of all single malt comes from Isles as such. So Islay, yeah, Islay. Yeah, so Islay whiskies has to be, is pronounced as Islay. Yeah, Islay. So it's a, Scotland is totally different when you pronounce it as such. So even the English, they speak English, so but it's quite different, very difficult to understand if you find a Scottish guy speaking to you. So please be very careful when you understand what he is trying to say as such. So many consider Islay whiskies to be categories on their own, and the influence of the sea is extremely evident here, and the whiskey tends to be very rich. Yeah, iodinized, scented, I mean very, if you scented iodine, so it's been very much in their whiskey as such, peaty and smoky of course. All right, let's go to by law the Scotch must be aged a minimum of 3 years in oak casks. Most often they are casks that previously held in Spanish sherry, but barrels previously used for other wines or a bourbon whiskey are also employed. Yeah, so the sherry from Spain, and all the bourbon whiskey barrels can be used as it's a very distinctive character as blended whiskey, right? So they can use anything they want. Yeah. In many cases, the character of what used to be the barrel delicately scented with whiskey. For example, there is a sherry cask scented with Machallan or the bourbon note of Glenmorangie. So these can be used again, as it's a blended one, so the recipes says, so they just follow, and then they just experiment whichever comes out a good way. As such, the most blended and single malt whiskies are age dated on the label: 8 years old, 12 years old. A case of blended whiskey, the age is designated in the youngest whiskey. As such, as you can see, it's Shiva's is 12 years new. I have uh, black 12 years. Okay, I don't know about that. Okay, so so the 12 age will be there. The blended whiskies are most often enjoyed on the rocks with a splash of soda or water, or mixed in a classic cocktail such as Rob Roy. A single malt whiskey are the ultimate sipping whiskey, I would say. Let's carry on. All right, so the basically now you can see the Scotch recommends adding a drop of mineral water in the single malt to open up the aromas, which I just now mentioned. Yeah, so cheers to all, and thank you very much. That was the end of the session today. I hope you have enjoyed it. And very nice, man. It's really it's mouth watering, I would say. Yeah, so any kind of trainings or more trainings you need, please you comment below, so that myself and my hotel can conduct training for you and for your staff, and it will be highly appreciated as such. So please be safe, be good, and it's a time where everybody should be taking care about yourself. Yeah, thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye.